Quitting is not an option. I have two sons, and I had 800 to 1,000 employees in my business, and they're saying, how are you going to get this figured out? They never said, well, I guess we'll just have to throw the towel in, because throwing the towel in was never an option. So if you make it not an option, then you're going to go figure out how to solve the problem. I grew up in Chillicothe, Ohio, a very small town, and working is pretty much what you did, and so you just get used to it. And I like the Mark Twain quote: "The best way to be successful is make your vocation your vacation." And so, one of the questions I encourage all entrepreneurs and everybody to ask themselves often is, okay, if you win $50 million in the lottery tonight, what do you do different tomorrow? And if the answer is not, I'm going to do more and bigger things than what I'm doing right now, then you're probably not working on the right things. So I consider myself gainfully retired right now. And I probably, I don't know how many hours a week I work, because I don't really keep track of it. But so I'm always considering new business things, and I like building business models and building businesses. And I have some ideas long term about economic development, how we approach it, and how we can make that better to create a lot more jobs for this country. And I was just getting ready to launch that a couple of years ago, whenever I was interrupted by this Fair Bradley issue. And I will get back to that as soon as I finish rebuilding these companies, which is coming along at a pretty good pace, actually. All this is just a story problem. It's going to be sales minus cost equals profit. The market's going to set the selling price. We always try to model and build our businesses to make a minimum of 10%, and then we build up from there. But we design for no less than 10. So you always got enough money to put in the bank. And, that's the other thing. If you're going to build a good business, you need a good relationship with banks and attorneys and accountants to build a team. And so I go out and try to find the people that are very good in their area, and then enlist them into my team for help. So I've got a great bunch of people that I work with. Well, first off, manufacturing is not dead. The thing that you can do domestically that you can't do from China, and this is kind of a mass customization discussion, but you've got a 4-week head start. Their lot sizes are huge. If you can't beat somebody in a race with a 4-week head start, you shouldn't be in the race. Nothing takes 4 weeks. I mean, we could probably, whenever I worked at Kenworth a long, long time ago, whenever I was starting out, it took about 127 man hours to build a truck in about 2 or 3 days. Now, why would I ever need 4 weeks to do anything? If you can build, and look at how fast they build cars and everything else. The secret is using what advantage you have. You've got an advantage of speed. Use it. You don't have an advantage for labor costs, so you reduce that cost as much as you can. You look to automation, you look to simplification, you look for high levels of repeatability so you can do something very quickly over and over and over again. So you take all the things in your toolbox that give you an advantage and you exploit that advantage as far as you can, because that is where you can beat the competition. It's about using whatever you have to your advantage. Location is to your advantage, speed is going to be to your advantage, and flexibility, and the ability to better communicate with customers, the ability not to say, well, we have a 10,000 piece minimum, and it's going to, etc. It's like, well, why would I buy 10,000 of those? Maybe I need 200 to start with that I can continue to customize to get the customers exactly what they want. That's something that you can't do easily overseas. She had about maybe 8 or 10 products in 5 colors. We were able to expand her line to about 40 or 50 items and take it up to 10 to 12 colors pretty rapidly. So we were able to tap into what we knew about, which items sold, because I obviously made a lot of items in that category, and then how to adapt it with her fabrics and trims to build something that consumers would would prefer, and then expand that really rapidly and grow it because I had a lot of experience in that area. Another area would be the disco beds, which I think you probably looked at also. Originally designed in South Africa, used by our special forces, and they were bought on variants, but when it needed to be used for the regular Army, then it had to be made in the USA. Well, originally Doug, who's the VP from South Africa, had hooked up with a company in Ohio, and they went to the major manufacturer, major distributor of the equipment and said, look, we want to build this factory. And those folks are over in Pennsylvania, and they said, no, you don't want to build a factory. Go talk to Bob Hinty. He can do everything you want to do. And so we basically, at the end of 2008, just on a reputation alone, were able to pull business in that we could immediately start manufacturing. And there was never a factory built in Ohio. They just used the factories we built. And since then, we built material for FEMA, cots for FEMA and Haiti and other places that, that would have never been, we would never been able to do that. And the South Africans would have never been able to make their deliveries to the Army on time after it had to be Berry Amendment compliant, had we not been able to step in and take the whole program over and ramp it up, a whole factory, in probably about 3 to 4 weeks. There's a product line called Inky Paninky. Inky Paninky was born in May of 2008, just weeks after Vera Bradley announced they were taking everything overseas. Inky Paninky means little peanut in Hawaiian. And so many of my workers, they call their kids little peanut, etc. Inky Paninky is something that the workers within my factory came up with, and they were having parties, pray for the peanut and etc. And we did sell some of the product, but it was not enough to replace 800 jobs worth or $30+ million in volume. You can't do that in 60 days. But that was something internally they came up with, and it gave them a lot of hope. So, if you are just a lathe operator or something, ask yourself a couple of questions. One is, what's the one thing that can't be done today that if you could do, it would completely change your business or your job? And then think about how you would apply that to what you do on a day-to-day basis. So from that standpoint, there is a role for everybody. Everybody has good ideas. Everybody, if you did nothing other than take a pad of paper out or just a notepad in your pocket, and every day you go about your work and you find something that, maybe irritates you a little bit, and then turn that into a problem and say, wow, what could I do different that would solve that problem? And so there is a role just for the average guy to say, you know what, I don't like this and I want to change it. And it could be somebody out there somewhere is going to think of different ways to fuel our cars and different ways of making fuels, etc. And it's probably going to be some lathe operator somewhere that has had enough. I mean, Philco Farnsworth was a farmer who invented TV. And, he imagined, if you read his history book, as he was plowing rows, that's how he thought about the interlacing of the signal that you get in TV. So, you don't necessarily have to be a physicist or a great scientist. What I've found is a lot of the people that do work on a day-to-day basis understand far more than they're given credit for, and there's always contributions that can be made, maybe even as much as, okay, you're working as a lathe operator, but how does that apply to something else? And so there's just most people have more good ideas than they ever give themselves credit for. Several times a week we're working on new products, and we always pull just employees in and say, okay, well, how would you do this? Or how could we do this? Or how does anything else you've ever learned apply to what we're doing? And they're always coming up with most of the ideas. Now, obviously, there's a role for me as an entrepreneur from a sales standpoint, and we've got a reputation for solving problems. And so, people bring us a lot of problems that they say, well, gosh, we don't know how to do this. And in a lot of cases, I don't know how either. I'll gather some employees around and we just talk about it. and give them a chance to look at it and say, well, if you did this, this would work, or maybe this is something we did for a different client. If we change it, it would also work to fix this problem. And so, that's a lot of just putting the people in the room and then going and making prototypes and testing. If I were going to redesign a system, and 2/3 of our commerce in this country is consumer spending, I would design a system for what I call manutailing, where we would instead of building bigger machines, we would build smaller machines, and we would manufacture at the retail locations, which I call manutailing, because then it invalidates the other guy's multi-billion-dollar investment he made in that factory. So you don't beat a guy by saying, I'm going to build a bigger factory. You beat him by building something that, even if he replicates, it's of no value to him. They will steal anything that they want. They copy off Americans because it's a very innovative country. Take that innovation to the next level, manufacture at retail locations, and there's plenty of margin for it. There was an article in 2003 in the Harvard Business Review, and it was an article about lean consumption. I don't have all the numbers right off the top of my head, but they mentioned that the vast majority of shoes that are purchased in this country are purchased on discount, or they said there was a 2 in 5 probability if you went into a store to buy a pair of shoes that the pair of shoes you went to get wouldn't be there. Well, there's only about 9 or 10 pieces to a pair of shoes. That's something that can easily be adapted and made on the spot. It's just about molding, and in some cases sonically welding them together. You could custom make stuff, laser cut the material at the store, and put them together in 10 or 15 minutes. The bottoms would already be pre-made. There's so many opportunities to basically take the other guy's multi-billion-dollar investment and take it out of the game. That's how you win the game. You change the rules. And since 2/3 of our economy is based on consumer spending, we have the ability to change the rules. We've elected not to change the rules because we let other people that bought those factories control our destiny. But it would be easy to transition, and it would also create more meaningful jobs than just a retail clerk job at $7 an hour, because we could have manufacturing split throughout the whole economy.